Welcome back to the most amazing Tanya shir of all time. Thank you for being here, Shner, today. And we'd like to start off with today. We're going to speak about the United States of America, and we're going to be talking about my issues of Wi-Fi at home. So, starting off with the United States of America, did you know that some people live in California, and it's a rich place, it's warm, beautiful weather, by the beach, fertile land if you want to be a farmer. It's amazing, incredible. There are other people who live somewhere like Arizona. It's arid, parched, desert. You know, in Arizona, everyone goes out in the summer, it's beautiful outside. In the winter, it's beautiful outside. In the summer, everyone stays home because it's boiling hot outside, and you can't step outside. You go straight from the house to the car, drive to shul, straight back into the car, drive home. But you know, if you live in Minnesota, it's the opposite, actually. There in the summer, everyone's outside, hanging out, having a good time. In the winter, it's house, car, shul, shul, car, house. So it's very weird that these people lived opposite lives. Yet at the same time, they're in this part of the same country. So even though the way they live their life is completely different, the experiences they have is completely different, because different parts of the country are in different locations and have different things going on. Nevertheless, they're part and parcel one of the same country. And this is how we're going to explain what we were asking last year, of how we could say that all Jews are one giant Jewish soul, all connected with Hashem, and all one, if there are so many different types of souls. It's just like the United States of America, where there's so many different states, with so many different temperatures, and so many different experiences, and the people in Alabama aren't making very much money, while the people in New York are making good money. You know, in New Jersey, everyone, what's the average income in New Jersey? Everyone's making $100,000 a year there. Well, if you go down to Mississippi, you know, everyone's making $30,000 a year there, if you're lucky. But it's all the same country. So too with our souls. That we all come from one mega Jewish soul, and we all are part of one soul. But we all have different experiences according to the way that our soul comes into the world. Now let's see the Alter Rebbe's original mashal for this. You ready? Who knows here some medicine? It's the best part of Chassidus. You start to learn, you're chavrusa, you're learning with some guy who's a doctor for 60 years, and you're like, oh, Howard, you're going to like this part. It talks about medicine, and you find out that Kabbalah medicine and Howard's medicine might not always fit together. And actually, the Alter Rebbe himself points this out, like we're going to say in a moment. So, the Alter Rebbe gives an example of a son. That where's a child, what's the relationship with the child and the father? The child started off forming his body from a little drop, which came from the mind of the father. Now, the Alter Rebbe says in Torah something very important, that the drop that the child is formed out of, the seed, is not actually physically derived from the mind. In ancient medicine, they believed that the way forming a child worked was that there's a brain, had a reaction. Little drops came from the brain down the spine. You know, by the spine, there's the vertebrae, which is bones, and then there is basically a cord of all different types of nerves and blood vessels going down the back of the spine. And then that comes out, and they thought there was a duct at the end, at the bottom, that comes out, and that's where the child comes out of. The seed of the child comes out of. So, in modern medicine, they found out that's not how it works, and the Alter Rebbe himself actually saw this many years earlier. Already over 200 years ago, the Alter Rebbe wrote in Torah that obviously it's not a physical drop coming from the brain, rather the spiritual source is in the brain. Because he says over there, if so, when you have children, then you would lose all your brain, because it'll drip out. And I think actually when you have children, you start to lose your mind. But anyways, it's the second time we said that joke, right? Last time it was funnier. Either way. So obviously everything spiritual is expressed in the physical. So it must be the physical expression of this is the fact, I assume it's the fact that the nervous system connects the brain that has to have a reaction in order for the reproductive system to work. So, now that we figured out that the child comes from a little drop within the father, which its spiritual source is the father's mind, let's talk about what happens to this little drop. This little drop that the person's made out of starts off as just one tiny cell. It's a tiny cell that has in it 23 chromosomes, and from that, that's the beginning of the creation of a person. Without that, you don't get anywhere. When you get older, you'll understand. So, I was waiting to say that. So then, when the drop goes into the mother, it develops and it grows. And after a few months, you start to see feet, you start to see hands, you start to see a head. So there's a very interesting phenomenon from one singular drop. When in this drop, there's no hands and feet and head. It's all the same. From that, later it develops lots of different parts. The mind, which is very advanced and can think rationally and logically. The heart, the seat of the emotions. The hands, which has fine motor function. And the lowest of the low, the feet, which all the feet can do is gross motor function. Walking, kicking. What else can your feet do? Smell. Okay, fine. You're saying gross motor function. Okay, I never realized that. There's a different type of gross motor function. So why do your feet smell and your nose runs? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Anyways, so all these different parts, the nose that runs and the feet that smell, all of that comes from the one singular drop. So that's very strange. So what do we see? That the one thing had all the different parts in it. When you look at the drop, you can't say this part is going to be a head and this part's going to be a foot. It was all one. That means after it's developed, the feet and the head equally came from that one drop, which the drop came from the mind of the Father. So really, the feet and the hands and the heart and the head all have an equal relationship when you look at it like this with the mind, the highest of a person, because it all comes from the Father equally, and just this part happened to end up being a foot, and this part happened to end up being a head. The Alter Rebbe goes on to speak about that even the nails of the foot, which is considered the lowest of the low, nails is like the extra in Chassidus. It's considered the offshoots, the unnecessary. Even the nails of the foot come from the head, come from the Father's mind, the drop that came from the Father's mind, just the same way as the brain itself. Unbelievable. So what do we see over here? We find out, the Alter Rebbe then begins to bring different quotes from the Gemara and from the Zohar about how the nails come from the brain. So we see that just like every part of the body comes from the same drop equally, so too every Jewish soul comes from Hashem's moichin, Hashem's mind, equally. And like we said from the Rambam yesterday, Hashem's mind is not like our mind. Hashem's mind is one and united with Him. So coming from Hashem's mind, so to speak, means that you come from Hashem Himself. So therefore, even the lowest Jew, a gangster, a robber, a bandit. You know how they say bandit in Yiddish? It's a beautiful word, bandit. So, all of them comes from Hashem the same way the greatest tzaddik, the most pious man, the greatest Talmud Chacham comes from Hashem. All of them equally. Just like all the different parts of the body, the lowest and the highest, the mind and the nails, all come from the same drop. Now, here's the problem. You ready for the problem with Tanya so far? We explained how the lowest of the low, someone like me, and the highest of the high, someone like Label, for example. We all come from Hashem equally. But there's a problem, because now the way the body developed, the fact is the mind is much more important than the nails. You've never seen a gangster film, an old Western where someone's like, oh, I'm going to shoot you in the nail. No one cares about the nails. The brain is the most important part. Very nice that 50 years ago when the guy was born, the mind and the nails used to be all one before he was born. But now the way it came out is different. What would that mean in our analogy? It would mean that very nice that my soul and Label's soul came from the same place. But now Label is a great tzaddik and I am You know what I'm saying? What would it be in our mashal of America? It would be just like it's very nice that Mississippi and New Jersey and California are all part of the same country. But the fact of the matter is, if you live in California or New Jersey, you're probably living it up. And if you live in Mississippi, maybe it's not so good. Maybe the other way around, maybe because it's cheap housing in Mississippi, it's better. But I'm not sure. But either way, they're definitely not the same, the way they come out. It's very nice they come from the same country with the same constitution and the same president. At the end of the day, you live in a different place. You have a different weather, you have different taxes, you have a different experience. So, here's our question. The way we are right now, we've all figured out that we all come from the same place. Our souls is all one in its source and where it comes from. But right now, are we all our souls the same or are we different? And to understand this, we have to talk about this massive issue I was having at home, that I had a problem with my Wi-Fi because my neighbor, who's a very nice guy, told me that I can join his Wi-Fi plan if I pay for half of it. So I paid for his Wi-Fi plan. So we paid half and half. The problem is the router is downstairs in the front of the house. And I work upstairs in the back of the house. So I get a very weak signal. a very, very weak signal because there's a floor in between, there's several walls. By the time I'm sitting in the back of the house working, it's absolutely worthless. This lightning fast Wi-Fi, which would be connecting me to the entire world, is instead dull and slow, and I feel completely disconnected from the world. It takes an hour to upload an email. So I found out this type of shtick you can do, that you can get a router, you can get another router. What's pshat? If I would run a wire from his router to a new router I would buy, and put the new router upstairs where I want it, then the new router would make internet right next to me, and I would have a lightning fast connection. But not only, you guys with me? Don't think that I'd have to buy a new router and buy a new plan. This isn't a new plan. It's the same internet, still coming from his router. Just this second router is directly connected with the first router. And now I'd be lightning fast connected. You get that? So all I need is a second router just closer to me. That's the only difference. His router is a perfectly good router. I just have the problem that I'm very far away from him. So I need a second router which is plugged into him. And now I have a new source of internet right next to me. And the same thing the Alter Rebbe is going to say with his example of the human body. That just like having a second router, which is exactly the same as the first router, just closer, so too after the drop comes from the father's brain, it comes into the son, and some of it becomes nails, and some of it becomes feet, and some of it becomes hands. And you know what else some of it becomes? Some of it becomes a new brain. A new brain is a new source. And now the nails and the hands and the fingers, all of them grow and live because they're connected to the brain. You know what happens if you disconnect your nails from the brain? You should try to do it at least once a week. So, you know what happens if part of your body is disconnected from the brain? Don't try it at home. You know, only the nails, not your finger or anything. Because the brain is the nervous center, the life center of the whole body. So too with our souls. That every Jewish soul came from Hashem equally. Just down here, some of them are still closer to the router. Some of them are still closer to Hashem. And some of them went pretty far away. Some souls actually are on a different floor. Some souls have some walls disconnecting them. Some souls are so far away, they don't pick up the signal. And they can't connect to Hashem. So for that, we need a new router, which is plugged into the first one. For this, we need the child's brain, which is in the same body and directly connected to the nails. For this, we need a type of soul who's still plugged in to Hashem. Hashem's Chokhmah that we all come from, we need on a mission, an emissary. We need an agent. We need a new Hashem wisdom in the world just closer to us. One that's completely plugged in to Hashem's original wisdom. And this is what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is someone, a real tzaddik, the ultimate tzaddik of every generation, is someone who's so given over to Hashem. He so doesn't care about himself and his whole life is about Hashem, that what? That he's completely just expressing Hashem. So just like Hashem's wisdom, I can't really connect with because I'm so far away from it. Hashem's trying to connect with me. I just moved very far away. So then Hashem sends a tzaddik who's completely given over and just expresses Hashem's chokhmah to live in a physical body in the same world as me. Someone I can relate to, someone I can speak to, someone I can interact with, and then through connecting to him, he's plugged into the original router. Now I have a lightning fast connection to Hashem. So we have a new source of chokhmah that comes directly from Hashem's chokhmah. We can all connect to our source. Just like the second router, which is directly connected to the original router. Just like the sun, that the drop that came from the father's brain turned into the son's brain. That from there, all other parts of the son's body derive their life force. So what do we find out? That the tzaddik is the new router, which is in our life, and practical for us to connect to. And for this, we're going to have to say a lot of stories tomorrow to make up for all the deep intellect that we discussed today.